the place where singles shine, celebrating life, divine by design, faith and love, we intertwine. Route 77 with your journey's prime.
Welcome to the Route 77 podcast. Today we're diving into the topic of waiting, something that we all deal with in different ways, especially as singles. Waiting can feel frustrating, uncertain, and sometimes like we're just stuck in a holding pattern. But today we're going to talk about how God calls us to wait with purpose, not just for what we desire, like marriage or other milestones, but to actively wait on Him, trusting that He knows best. Welcome to the Route 77 podcast. I am your host, Natasha, and I am here with Monique.
Hello.
And David.
Hello.
David can't do this.
And just a second. Wait a second. Just wait. And wait. How was that? How was the waiting?
I was like, are you going to fart? What the heck are we waiting?
I honestly thought we were waiting for Zeus to start barking.
That's funny.
I was just introducing our topic of waiting for Godot. God.
While you're waiting, my little brother is visiting. If you're hungry, the rice isn't done yet, so you have to wait. Wait, because we're not going to talk about waiting at all.
No, he has to wait.
He has to wait. Yeah, the rice isn't done yet. He has to wait for it to be.
And that's like a good segue in a sense, because like, what happens if you don't wait for the rice to cook?
Well, then it's crunchy.
Yeah, exactly. So it's worth the wait.
Yeah.
As much as we don't like to wait, it's worth the wait. Yeah, we were.
There are times when you can't wait, though, like when you got to go to the bathroom.
Yes.
Do not make me wait.
That's a lot. That's a lot when you got to go.
That could be a bad thing to wait for. The bathroom to be free.
Yes. It's like the longest, however many minutes.
The longest
in your life.
I'm not doing the potty dance. You are. Just get out.
Oh man. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway. Well, I asked Monique to kind of glance through this book that I want to get reading. It's called The Confessions of a Christian Spinster Finding Purpose in a Perplexed and Paired Up Church by Alicia Plummer. I can't see the rest of the book. Plummer. Okay.
Oh, Plummer.
Alicia Plummer. And it's not on my to-read list, but I asked Monique to kind of glance through to see if there was something that jumped out at her that we might have a good conversation about. And one of the things she pointed out was the waiting section she had on waiting.
It's called, can you see that?
A Fairy Tale Ending. Confession 24. So that was just like that got the ball rolling in my head. And then today while I was working, I kind of delved into various podcasts about waiting and waiting on God and all those type of things. And then found that there was quite a few themes that came out. There was a few themes that came out of each of these ones. And I thought they were very good because most of the time these were not talking about being single specifically, but it was just that how to be a good person, not a good person, but like a good Christian waiter. And I don't mean waiter as a table waiter. You can be a good Christian, one of those two, but how a person can wait in a Christian manner. So ironically, I found was interesting was the one thing that came up in several people's talking was Habakkuk, which was kind of, I wouldn't think some of the minor prophets to go to, but that was the one that would come up quite a bit because in Habakkuk 2:3, it says, "For the vision awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay." And I don't think this is like, I'm not a person who's saying like insert myself into this. So I'm saying like, For the vision of marriage awaits an appointed time. It speaks to the end. It will not prove false. Though it lingers,
For
wait for
Natasha.
marriage. It will certainly come and will not delay.
For
Like that,
Natasha.
some people
You
will
got to
do
put
that
your
for
name in
Natasha.
there.
Like, yeah, for Natasha. Like, so some people actually do that. They'll like sit there and they'll put themselves and they'll say, that's my prophecy. And no, this is Israel's prophecy. But what we can learn from it is something we can use.
And
And
what's that?
Just to also clarify the context of Habakkuk is him having complaints about the punishment of wickedness and evil and punishment of Judah, and
So
then
that's
God
what he's waiting
using,
for.
and then God explains to him, "You have to trust in me, wait for me, for I'm using the Babylons to punish Judah." Second complaint is why are you using a more wicked nation to judge Judah? What about Babylon's sins? And God says, "Wait, they will also be judged according to their wickedness."
Hmm.
So that's the context.
yeah, and that's a good summary, David. Because we have this idea like God, when are you gonna bring me a husband or bring me a wife or let me have kids or get that job or whatever, fill in the blank. And God at times does say, wait,
Mm.
like I have things in order, like I have it coming, don't worry, just wait.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds all well and good, but when you're living in the midst of a state of depression because you're not married and everyone else is, or getting married, you like it feels like a platitude.
It does.
I think
It
it
does.
feels like because people just tell you it's like just wait. It just like how God told Habakkuk to wait. He had plans and they're coming. Don't worry. But it's because they never really gave you a theology of waiting. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yep. Yep.
The church doesn't really. The church in general is really good at teaching like the big things.
Yep.
Like salvation and sin and eternity and Trinity and like these type of things. Like they're super good at those big things, but when it comes to actually understanding how you should live properly
now.
in these smaller areas in the now, I feel like there is a disconnect, and unfortunately, many people find themselves in that boat of not being in a relationship but wanting to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's just people telling them, just wait, just wait, just wait. But it's not like, it's just like people telling me like, there's some people that are called to be single or marriage will come, don't worry. But there's no like sort of indication of like how you're supposed to live your single life, how you're supposed to wait, how you're supposed to like actually do this. Because you're trying to figure out what you should do. And I think too, like I think it's one of the biggest things I don't know, sin in or a misunderstanding when you're single is that it's an in between.
Right.
It's not a destination. It's not a place that you do anything. You just it's just there until you're married. So even when we talk about sexuality, we say we're waiting until marriage, which is a good thing, but
Right.
you're actually not but you're actually basically under the impression that that's going to happen. So then you can express your sexuality.
You know what came to mind for an analogy with that is going to the train station, waiting for the train. You're sitting
Yeah,
there, you're waiting for the train. Yeah. Or you're
yeah,
waiting for
you're
a
just,
bus. If you've ever sat out in the cold, like when it's really cold and you're waiting for the bus, that's kind of thing. Yep.
I almost had that in a sense where one time I came back from university, but I had the time wrong when I told my parents. And it was, I told them 11 p.m., but it was actually 10 p.m. that my train got in. And then the tiny little train station closed as soon as I got there. So I literally waited outside in the cold. It was like October or something. It was pretty nippy for an hour in the middle of nowhere, just me, because my parents like took an hour to get there because that's how long it takes to get from my house. So they were under the impression it was so I was like sitting there and you're just like with your luggage
Yep.
and you don't really know what to do with yourself. And but should we
And
be
that's the
telling?
And that's the kind of waiting that people think that they're supposed to be doing, is that you're just
Yeah.
supposed to sit there on the bench in the cold.
Have all your marriage luggage, your
Yeah.
hope chest, and all these things
Yep.
packed up around you so you're ready to go.
Yeah. Waiting for the bus to come and pick you up, or for your, whatever intended to come pick you up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shem.
And the thing is like, I find that I think we should be waiting for the things that God has promised us.
Hmm.
God never promised marriage
No.
or children.
Can I do the
Um,
scripture?
Yeah, go for it. It's one of your favorites. I know.
It is, because we do have a script that we kind of follow, right, David? This is actually a very important script for me, because when I first became a Christian, I started going to this church. I was in a sort of like so we were just in the home to kind of doing this kind of a meeting. Can't even quite remember what it was all about. And then we had sort of like a prayer circle, and one of the people, a lady, she said to me, she says, "I just feel like this verse is going to be very important to you." And it's from Isaiah 40:31. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. So I never understood that verse back then. And it took a lot of years for me to understand that verse today. Because I don't know about anybody else, but I sure hate waiting. And I actually did a little blurb about that. And it may be on our Facebook page, but I would like to get it up on our website. That's not a hint. When I
Yeah.
first joined Gateway Church, it was interesting because I always knew that whenever I heard this voice, whenever somebody sang the song, whenever I would be walking somewhere, it's like I'd go to the bus stop, and for some stupid, well, I wouldn't say it's a stupid reason, but it would be on the bus thing. And I'm just like, well, that's an odd place. But I always felt that it was just sort of like God's way of telling me that I'm still with you, that I'm still, I'm with you in everything that you're doing and wherever you're going. And just to wait on him. So when I first started going to Gateway, we have Profession of Faith. And I got to tell this story because it was an amazing time for me. I'd never joined a church like that before. I'd always just gone, but never did like a Profession of Faith and become an actual member. So this time I actually did. And there was a group of 4 of us, and I was second in line. And for some reason, the pastor said, "Can you actually go first?" And I was doing my talk with the church on this verse and what it meant to me. And the song that played just before I spoke was a song with those words in it. So there wasn't a dry eye in the church. They all cried. So it's a good verse to hold, and you can buy it on pictures. You can have it, put it on your wall. It's
Many people use it. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's understanding, what does it really mean, this verse, when it says to wait for the Lord? Because I know
But
in my
we
life,
say, yeah, and that's why I want to you actually have to understand that there's a difference between what you want and what God's doing.
Mhm.
And we may want marriage and children, which is a good thing.
Yep.
It's not a bad thing. It's called a blessing in the Bible. So definitely, it's not like you're wanting a bad thing. But when we're telling our young people that they're just waiting for marriage till they have sex, something like using words like that, waiting till marriage, or just wait, just read this verse. You just wait. God has something for you. He'll give you strength while you're waiting for marriage, for children. Like, it's setting you up for a failure. And then you've got to, not always, because people get married and have kids, but it can set you up for failure, something that God never promised. And either God is a liar and promised you marriage and children and didn't give that to you, or he promised something else and you are assuming because you would like something good and desire something good that he's going to get it for you. And that's It's not the same thing.
No.
It's and I think it really like it comes down to like what has God promised us? Has he promised us marriage? Has he promised us children? Has he promised us great wealth? No suffering? Um
I know
everything
people
that
who believe
we
that.
think. I know there's people that believe that. And that's the thing. And then when something comes, it's like, oh, your faith's not strong enough. Because the other option would be that God's not strong enough.
Yeah.
Um and
Yeah. And they can't say
I think
that. So it's got to be something wrong with you.
yeah, and you're the one that's wrong. You're the one that has something wrong with them.
Yeah.
And it's not actually understanding what it means to wait on the Lord for things. Um, I even heard one guy speaking. I was listening to a podcast, I can't remember which one it was, but it was a guy speaking to young people, like, about being wanting to be married. Things this guy was talking to these young people about, wanting to be married and seeing all these people get married. And then he's talking about how the Israelites ended up having to go around and around the desert because they had sinned, and God wanted them to go from point A to point B, but their sin caused them to go in circles. So some of us might be going in circles because we sin, and God wants us to get to marriage, but we're going in circles because we've sinned. And I'm like, hey, well, kind of. We do have consequences for sin,
Yeah.
but it's not like you're kind of saying like marriage is there for you. You just got to get there. You just got to get down the road far enough and you'll stop going in circles and you'll eventually get there. And I think that is a disservice to young people and single people to say that, like, again, it's not God's fault. It's your fault. You have, and I think, yeah, there are consequences to sin, and that can keep you from getting married, perhaps. But it's not really like God's not promised that you'll get married and have children and have grandchildren, then die. Like there's no set, there's just that we'll live and we'll die. That's pretty much the only guarantees we have of what we're gonna have here on earth. Um and then or we'll live until the last day. One of the two.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that because that's pretty much the first story in this chapter on the fairy tale ending. Is where the princess asks the king if she can go. She says, all my friends have a prince. Now I want to go and find myself one. He says, well, what do you think is going to happen if you go looking for one? Well, I'll find one. But how do you know that's the one for you? Well, my friend has one and my other friend has one. So why can't I have one? Doesn't that sound a little bit interesting? Sounds like something we always want, but shouldn't have. We're never happy with what we have anyways. Whether we're single, married, with kids, without kids, we're never happy. It's like we always are looking for something that everybody else has. I want that. We watched that one show and the mansions. Like, wow, I don't think I've ever seen one like that in real life. Do I want that? I don't think
know.
I want.
That's a lot of cleaning.
That's what I was thinking. I don't think I'd want to clean that.
But still, like, it's only like, it's not that we don't want it. It's because we don't want to deal with it. You know what I mean? It's just like, but there's like we tend to think that we tend to start comparing.
Yes.
Ourselves. And I think Jesus talks about this. I think it was Peter when he asks him like, hey, why is that guy getting this and I'm doing that? And he goes, well, what happens to them has nothing to do with you. Just do what you're supposed to do. It's basically what Jesus told him.
Yeah.
It's just like whether or not I, ascend him up to heaven in this minute or not, like it's irrelevant.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with what is going to happen to you because each of us has our own path. What's that, David?
Wasn't that with Peter and John and Jesus?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
When I think Christ was saying how everyone is going to be crucified, and then he doesn't mention John or something, and then Peter's just like, so what about John? And then Jesus is, well, why does it matter what happens to him?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Exactly. And again, my dad used that verse on me when I was single. About because he's starting to go, well, they have them and everybody's got them. Oprah Winfrey's around just handing out husbands and to everybody, just you have one and you have one, you have one. Except I missed the line. I was sleeping, I guess. But that's
you were out playing soccer while they were handing out all the baits.
Yeah, they're just like kind of messing out with the spouses, and I was tying my shoes. I don't know. something happened.
Something happened.
But again, like it just was never about how to actually live as a waiting person. But then I was actually the question should be, what are you waiting for?
right.
Because I would say 99% of the single people are waiting for marriage.
Yes.
Is that a proper goal to wait for? Is sort of my question. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but is that something we should be waiting for aside from waiting for marriage for sex?
Yeah, because
Again,
that's all it is.
I think it has less to do with it should be like God's called us to be celibate unless we're married. So it's I think that's a better way of putting it rather than
Well,
waiting for marriage.
yeah. Well, and that point that you just made, I have. Yeah, never mind that. It says like she puts points. This is a really interesting book, and I really think we should get down into reading it. We got to finish the other one first.
Mhm.
Our comparisons are driven by lust, the desire to have, right? That's what we just talked about. And it's not confined to sex. It's lust for houses or lands, love or validation, respect or approval. You can be driven by your desire to have more of anything, money, ministry, or mud pies.
What would greed be then?
That is the same thing. So greed, lust,
I guess greed is
from them
wanting. I think greed is wanting more
wanting
of
more.
something you may already have, or
Yeah. Like they say, when you start making a lot of money, all of a sudden it's not enough and you want more. And it'll never be
Right.
enough. It'll never be enough.
or you could say the same for like kids with sweets. It's like it's never enough until they get a stomach ache. But
Yep.
they have some sweets, but they want more sweets.
Right.
They want
right.
his sweets, not just my sweets, his sweets, like or
Right.
toys or whatever.
Yep.
Yep.
So, and then she says, lust is a mob boss. Your debts are forever and they're never letting you go. You always owe more. Even if you allow lust to devour you and make casualties of those you love, you cannot obtain what you seek because love cannot be satisfied. And I thought and that goes into the coveting, right? And the comparison and
And I think too, because we tend to romanticize anything that we really want like that.
yes, it becomes like
We
that
see
fairy
that. We
tale.
talked about the Hallmark movies and
Oh yeah.
most rom-coms and everything. Like everything is fixed by a relationship.
Yeah.
Even though
Yeah.
we go up and down until we get there, and then that's all good. They kissed and we're happy now, or they go further depending on the movies. But it's like we actually romanticize and we go, I want that, or I want one my friend has. You think it looks like they have this perfect marriage because you just see the outside. You don't see the struggles that they have as two human people. That they may have an awesome marriage. That doesn't mean it's perfect.
No, no, no.
And so we tend to like just think about those things. Like I want the good life and the this and the that and the this and that. And then when it happens, when you force it or it just happens or whatever, like it's not going to live up to the hype that you've put in your head.
And I think that's what
And
happened to me when I got married too, because I thought, even though I had reservations about what I was doing, I was kind of like, but I always believed that once we're married, it'll get better and we will just settle down into that blissful domestic life. Ask me how that worked for me.
because you're supposed to do this and then you got married and then this happened and this happened and this happened. And then
But I think this is where that waiting on the Lord really should have spoken harder to me than I gave it credit for. Because had I done that, maybe I would have given it more thought and asked myself those hard questions that was like, what is it that you are, why do you believe this is the one, instead of waiting and seeing if there's something better? But I just needed to be married right now.
Right. Because, and then, so that's why we asked the question, like, is waiting for marriage an appropriate expectation? Is waiting for marriage what we're supposed to wait for? Or should the focus be on fulfilling what God's calling is right now? And what we're waiting on is God to more, I guess, reveal to us his plan.
Yep. And I know,
so like
this is going to fall into this next scripture that you have. Because one of the things that I fell into was I believed that if I just waited, that God wasn't gonna give it to me. It wasn't gonna happen. I was going to be that person like I always was, the one on the outskirts looking in on everybody else's happy life, and I wasn't gonna get it because for some reason I didn't deserve it. Oh look, there's a fly
Wouldn't that
rabbit
be
with a
similar? Wouldn't that be similar to the parable that Jesus spoke about, the returning master? When
I
the
think
master gave 10, 5, and 1 talent, the last one didn't do anything but waited.
Mhm.
maybe
I think partly, yeah.
partly, but this one here, the scripture in Matthew 7:9-11, which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone, or if he asks for fish, will give him a snake. This is, I was just like, yeah, I'd be the one he'd give a stone to. I'd be the one he'd give a snake to, although I do like snakes.
That verse is in context of human value, though.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I
But
think it's just understanding that, like we treat God like we talked about, like a genie or like
yes.
a wish granter or
Hmm.
a magician or somebody that like a butler,
Yeah. Grant me my
vending
three
machine,
wishes
any other
and
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's what you ask for, and you're like, if I ask, you're gonna give it to me because you said, ask anything of me, and I will give it you. And we say these things like that, but actually, when we look at him as a father, like look at you could ask any father or any parent, uh, why don't you give your child everything they ask for, including that sharp knife or all the money that they want? They can't either. Like, why do you not give them everything they ask for? And because they know it's not good for them or that it's not the time for that, or like, why don't we let a 14-year-old who wants to drive?
I
You know,
actually,
like
I think
it's
in this society, there are some people in this society who do that, but we have seen the consequences of what happens when they do that.
yeah,
Because how many of these young people who daddy gave a brand new car to, and then next thing you know, that car is crashed, and the child
yeah,
is injured or worse because, well, it's got to give my son everything he asks for because then he will. I don't know why they would do that.
because they think it's good parenting. I don't
So
know.
then what does it mean to knock and to let the door be opened and ask and it shall be given?
But then in
And I
James,
think that's
it also says that you ask, but you don't ask rightly. So are you asking out of your own greed, or are you, I think that has something to do with it. What
I
is the
think
heart of
you're
the
not
matter?
asking, yeah, you're not asking in a way that's like trying to be of one mind with God.
Mm,
You're trying to direct everything. You
yep.
can ask it, and like you could ask your dad. Like I'm sure any of us could go to your dad and say, "Dad, can I borrow $100?" Okay, just say we just ask that. Like we can ask, but it doesn't mean our dad is then has to give it to us.
Right. I remember I
Like
asked
he
my
could have
dad
a
for a car.
multitude of reasons.
I never got it.
Yeah, there could be a
Shit.
multitude of reasons. It could be they don't have it. They don't, they've been lending to you in the past and think it's not good for you to keep borrowing from them instead of standing on your own 2 feet.
Yeah.
It could be they are a mean dad and just say, no, like, it's
Yeah.
all mine or whatever, but you don't know. But I just mean like, you can ask these things of God, but like, are you willing to receive the answer is
Or
kind of
accept the
like
consequences.
accept the consequence because sometimes they do give you that knife or let you touch the stove when he said no, it was hot.
Yeah. I've done that too.
Because yes, my dad's favorite uh sermon illustration was me at like 3 or something when he said, "Don't touch the wood stove," and I just grinned at him and went both my hands.
Oh,
So
that had to
yeah,
hurt. Yeah.
I have no recollection except the only way I know what happens is because he always used it in sermon illustrations. So uh but, like, there's times when you can let these things but God wants to like, I think God's desire is that we desire what he desires. It's kinda like a weird way of saying it, but, like, he wants our
Best.
focus in life to coincide with his desires and laws and rightness. And if we start asking for things because we want them and not because you're asking them and saying, hey, God, if this is in your will, if this is what you want for me, I would like to be married. But if it's not what you want for me, please show me what you want for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't often we don't often pray that way because I think we sort of feel like we jinx ourselves.
Yes. Yes.
Like
Oh,
if
this one
I
he's
give
gonna
this
send me to
out,
Africa.
yeah, like if I give them this out, then he's gonna take it,
Yep.
and then it will be all my fault that I didn't get married.
That's totally true. I remember actually thinking that. But wait a minute, I don't want to pray that because if I do, then he
don't.
might send me to Africa.
Right?
It's
Then
hot.
I'll be
I don't like hot.
and there's snakes.
He
But you
is
say you like
also
snakes, so you're good.
he's also omnipresent. So even if you think these things, he knows these things.
He already knows what's in your head, anyways.
So the whole point of you sitting there and not mentioning it, it's still concise. It still has the same conclusion.
But you try really hard not to think about that.
Thanks. Now that throws that all out the window.
Yeah, no.
Oh my
You
word.
feel like, but it's almost like you said it, so now I can do it. He's gonna get you. Like he has a
I
little
would
contract. You signed it.
I
Yep.
would say knock. I would say ask and it shall be given, but let the whatever is given be to glorify you, the Lord.
Mm.
Mhm.
Right? So even if it's not entirely the will of God, as God is demonstrated through Pharaoh and through the Israelites, that he let them become their own desires. But let it be known that whatever you do can be used to glorify God. So what you ask, you may personally want in life, but also make sure your heart is set on using that in some way to glorify God.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think ask yourself, like, what if I never get married? What if I never get that job that I want?
You can have a ministry like this one.
Right? Exactly. But I just mean, like, ask yourself those questions when you're praying and be like, it'll show you where your heart is.
Yeah.
Even if you want to try not to think about it.
It's funny because you'll probably get this because I know you got this, and I still laugh about it today because I think it's hilarious. Now that you've started this single ministry, you're going to get married in no time.
Just like,
Yeah.
no, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Never say never to God, but I feel like this is where I am.
Yeah.
So it kind of brings us
and it's
to
not a bad thing. Like
No.
I think it's one of the things that people, especially single people, are afraid of. That being single is a bad thing,
Mhm.
but it's not been a bad thing.
Again, you're in the waiting room
Yep.
of life instead of actually living your life.
Why don't you step out of the waiting room, which is cold, dark, and blank, that's just white walls, go out into the sunshine where the trees and the flowers are and enjoy life.
Well, that's why we call this Route 77, because it's about being on a road, actively driving down the road, and the destination is heaven, not marriage.
Right.
Like that's just another lane on the way to heaven. And so it's about being like actively waiting on the Lord. And that's what's kind of crazy. It's like people are like, well, what am I supposed to do? We saw Abraham and Sarah, what happened when they didn't wait. And they waited a long time for their child. Like, it wasn't like, I'm sure they were like, okay, I'm pretty sure that Abraham and Sarah were doing the thing that would create a baby.
Right.
They were just sitting there, twiddling their thumbs, waiting for God to immaculately conceive Sarah.
And you have no, don't imagine.
They were probably,
they were old. Don't imagine it.
they were older, but I think it was like something like there was decades before God, like, because God told him this when he called him out of Ur, was it Ur of the Chaldeans? Like when he called him that he would make his descendants greater than the sands of the seashore. And he's like had this promise from God, and it's been decades of
Nothing.
fun times with his wife, and nothing happening. And then look what happened when they decided to one person was saying, like, when he said, I'm going to take over the steering wheel. And that kind of works with our thing. And then Ishmael was a result, and it had long lasting ramifications.
Even to this day.
To this day, yes. And maybe our ramifications won't be felt so earth shatteringly, but there are ripples that come out. And ultimately, it has to do with like our relationship with God.
Yeah.
And if we are just going to be like, want to be like, okay, God, I gave you your chance, like I'm going to do it now. And that's what happened with me, with my ex. I thought I was following what God wanted me to do. Like I struggled a lot with different things, but ultimately it was like me trying to control the situation.
Yep.
And then, so then the question is, it's like, okay, I'm not supposed to take control. I let God work this out. So what am I supposed to do? And what I found interesting, it was like a few different podcasts I was listening to brought the same thing up in different way of saying it. But essentially, your job is to do the next thing.
Mm.
And that looks different for different people. So it just says, I'll read the scripture that goes with this section, Micah 6:8. He has told you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not very specific. Like, okay, what does that look like in my life right at this day?
Should I go to law school?
Right? But that's the thing, like instead of going, oh, need to get married and it's some future event, actually look at your life right now. Like, what are you to do now? Is it just simply going to your job, doing it to the best of your ability, standing up for God's right there, like, even if it's like, say something ethically is going wrong and you have to stand up for it, or just go and do your job at Tim Hortons and
Be nice
do
to
your
people.
best for him there.
Yeah.
Yeah, love kindness, walk humbly, and do justice.
Yep.
Like, and then maybe it's like what I did with my master's. Like, it's taking me a while because I have to put it on hold for a bit for financial reasons. But like everybody keeps going, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? And I have released that to God, saying He knows what wants me to do with it.
Yep.
I'm just going along for the ride in the sense of trying to do each course as I come to it to the best of my abilities, and to delve deeply into the topics I believe God's calling me to, which is primarily singleness with a couple other side things. Uh, but it's actually like opening up like the stress of my life of trying to figure it all out and being like, right now, God is calling me to do this ministry. And right now I'm trying to figure out like what the next step is, like where God's calling us. I think it's in-person meeting of having an event. Uh, and and it was going video, which we did. So we're taking it slow and doing my degree, which I'm working hard to be able to start again in January. Um, and work that step. It's not, oh, where do I need this ministry to be in 5 years? Where do I need like my degree to be? Does it have to be done, next year?
Yeah.
Like it's like
You have to
I'm
look at
doing
today.
what I can right now.
Yes.
Yeah. And for me, like the next step, like if you're single and wanting to be married, like your next step is not really like going on another dating site, going to all the singles events. I don't think that's really the best way to meet people. It can be where you meet people, but your next step might just be, hey, what can I do in my church?
Mm.
It could be, hey, I'm doing my schooling. I need to focus on that. I need to do it to the best of my abilities. Hey, I'm at this job. What would I like to do maybe at the next step of this job? What can I do towards that? Or something to that effect. Like there's always something you can do in the moment. Like people say, work on yourself. Like, and you're like, yeah, okay. But it's like, I'm just working on myself and I'm loving myself.
Very good.
And you're just like, oh my word.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. But it's more like you still got it. You're not just gonna like sit in your room and meditate all day.
No.
You gotta like live.
Well, and it also says, to concentrate on today because tomorrow has enough worries of its own.
Mhm.
Forget about what happened in the past because you can't go back to it. You can't fix it. You can't change it. You can't alter it. In 5 seconds, you've already missed it. Right?
Mhm.
You can only, that second is gone now. Oh, that second, oh, it's gone now. That second, it's gone now. This is how it is. Time is like that.
And that's what like David was talking about that parable with the talents.
Yeah.
And if you look at it simply like as something as simple as time.
Yeah.
As simple as time, but like as basic as time. Like what are you doing with the time that God is giving you?
Yeah.
Are you spending all your time waiting
Buried in
for
the sand.
something that's not, yeah, it's like it's waiting for something that's not here?
Yep.
Or are you waiting for something that like Christ's return?
Yeah.
or heaven, which means that you're actively doing something in this moment to further the kingdom of God in practical ways, like
Yeah.
just doing well at your job.
Don't do what the other people have done. Sell all your stuff and go stand on a mountain and wait, because it ain't gonna happen. It'll come like
No,
a thief in the night. Trust me.
yeah, so you don't need to wait. You don't need to wait like on top of a mountain. No,
No,
it's just
no.
God still wants you to do your, like you said, that some people will be like reaping in the fields and some people will be sleeping. Like they're still going about their day, but you're always understanding that this day is coming.
Yeah.
And we're hoping and waiting and joy for it. But it doesn't mean, like, if we waited for eternity with the same passion we wait for marriage, like could you imagine the difference, how we review it? Like, we view marriage as the be all and end all, and yet we think about, yeah, well, the end of time, whenever it comes, whatever. Like, it's out there somewhere.
It's out there somewhere.
You know, like,
But also know that
those-
although we may not know the day or hour Christ comes back, he does give us signs that it is close or very close.
Yep. But we've been close for so long.
I always figure we're only like 70, 80 years max from our own eternity anyway. Like, it could be like 5,000 years from now, but we would be dead and gone in a sense from this life.
And
And
we'll
then
already be in it.
awaiting like into the period of timelessness, I think. I don't think you're sitting to sit there as a spirit just like ticking away. This is 5,000 years to take you for. And then like Adam and Eve are over there going, you have no idea.
They're from cobwebs.
It's
Wait,
been so long.
It's been so
We were
long.
the first. We were the first.
We've been here for so long. Oh, look, it's Methuselah. You haven't been around that long.
Yeah, right. So it's just yeah, like we put our priorities on this thing that yes, well, God calls it good and a blessing. It's not the thing that we should be focusing all of our like attention on and things. And so just look more directly down on the path where you are right now instead of, are you going, is it over there? Is that like a real wedding over there? Is that just like a mirage wedding? Like it's
Well, and we know, just based upon what has happened since you and I got to know each other as friends and doing the Taekwondo thing, and then we moved into the house, and how God has changed us because we took our focus off of what we were, we took our focus off of that marriage thing and decided that we were just going to just live in a house. And that was one of the things that I worried about when we first got to the house. Like, I know what's going to happen. She's going to meet a guy and she's going to move out. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to be stuck with a house I can't afford, or they're going to kick me out. One of the two. I'm not sure.
Don't worry, I'll come along and move in.
So there you go.
there you go. There you go.
It's safe.
But it didn't happen because I had to let that go and just say, well, obviously God brought us here for a reason, and now we're going into our 5th year, so we'll be having to renew our mortgage at the end of next year, and it's just like, wow, that went by fast.
I know, right?
And
And
the
even like
things
for a
we've
podcast,
learned.
the girls that we have come, the sisters we have become,
Yep.
brother with David.
Yep.
Like just the last
Our devotional time at night, the prayer time we've
it's
had.
just been an insane amount of growth. Like I think all the way up till like that point was maybe as much growth as it's been since then. Like spiritual growth for me, like spiritual growth, life growth. Like it's crazy when
Completely.
you instead of what you have not, and when you focus on what God has given you and you realize like, wow, yeah, like it was funny, interesting. I was listening to uh Elizabeth Elliot. There was a podcast, it's the Elizabeth Elliot podcast, and I really recommend. It's really amazing. I was showing Monique like what they can do with the sound files. Like it sounds like you or I talking right now. So it's really easy to listen to. She's really easy to listen to. And she was talking about like this one story of this guy was basically in the concentration camps and then asking, like trying to keep the morale up and asking people in the concentration camp, other fellow prisoners, basically, like, what have you lost that is like, what have you lost in your life that is so devastating? And at the time, they were not being fed for a day, and they were like focused on that, being hungry and stuff. But then if you actually look at it, like he was like, if you're alive, you have hope. You still have family back there or whatever. Like it's not like they haven't lost things. But when you actually look at your life, and we're not in concentration camps, so we can already say that we don't have that.
We don't have that.
But it's just like what have we lost in our life that is so detrimental for not being married, or like for not having these things, or what has God blessed us with that we're not really appreciating and understanding that we have? If we thought about devastating loss, you could probably think of things that would be devastating. Should you lose them? And then you realize that God has brought these things together and brought us to these points, and provided us with so much stuff to do the things that he wants us to do, instead of like sitting in the doctor waiting room, like looking at magazines and art on the wall and staring at our phones. Like, and it's just, I don't know. It's just, it's interesting. We look at Isaiah 64:4. Since ancient times, no one has heard, no ear has perceived, no eye has seen any God besides you, who acts on behalf of those who wait for him.
Yeah. And when you were talking about that thing about what have you lost? Having gotten married, I lost more than had I not gotten married. And that's the thing that struck me. It's just like, because I didn't wait, I went ahead and did my own thing because I felt like I had to, otherwise I was going to miss out on something. And I missed out on a whole lot more by not waiting.
Mhm.
So there's that.
And my way, same with me. I don't have the same regret from the past that some other people do, where I can say like I wished it back. Like I don't wish everything back because of who I am now. But like to look, I actually am like just even thinking about it now, like how I've like taken my focus off this mirage of the future and look down at the road that I'm actually walking or driving. Like I'm looking down and like actually seeing what's here, almost like for the first time, whenever we got to the point where we were talking about this ministry and what singleness meant, and
Yep.
like understanding that it was not a waiting room. It wasn't an in between state of nothingness. And then instead actually looking down and seeing there's so much here.
Yeah.
And there's so much that God has. Like there's almost more to do than I have time for. Like
I was thinking the same thing. I'm a full heck of a lot busier than I was when I was all by myself and doing nothing and just sitting there watching TV and feeling sorry for myself.
Mhm.
This is so much more fun.
Right. And I feel like I'm working just as much in a sense because I was on the farm before and then with my ex and everything. But I don't feel like it doesn't feel as
Stressful.
just stressful or depressing or overwhelming. Like, because I actually feel like I'm actually accomplishing good things.
Yeah.
Like, do you guys realize this podcast is number 90?
Number
This is the
90.
90th episode.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Wow. And we've done, wow.
Yep.
We're closer to our, hang on.
Just another 10 weeks to our 100th episode.
We are closer to our 2-year mark.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it just goes to show what happens when we kind of stop looking off in the distance and actually look down at what God has for us to do and is here now. And again, it doesn't mean you don't go and do the things that you need to do, like work a job or pay bills and all these things, but you actually can do all of those things with the heart that God's giving you, like,
Yes.
because it is like the good thing. It's like, how do you um like do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly?
Yep.
And you can apply that to everything. And then be like, what am I supposed to do? Hey, how can you do these things where God has you in this moment?
You're forgetting like one of the most important things, faithfulness.
Yes.
Yep. Trust.
Justice, love, and faithfulness.
Hmm.
The whole Old Testament and Jesus tried to teach that.
Yeah. So when we talk about waiting in this state is not waiting for marriage. It's waiting for the kingdom of God to come in its
Mhm.
fullness. And the waiting is not passive. It's an active waiting.
Yep. Yep.
So it says in Psalm 27:14, wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. And it's not a false hope of saying, wait for God to bring you your spouse.
No.
No, there's no promise like that. But God does promise us so many things. He promises us our eternity. He promises us um to be like he's going to be true and good and sure through everything that we're doing. And he promises our salvation and he promises eternity. And these are the things that we should be excited about and we can be waiting for, but actively waiting by doing stuff now.
Yep.
So,
One
like when
of
I
the
see those parents bring their like laptop to Taekwondo and they're waiting for their kid and they're doing stuff
On the laptop. They're working.
on the laptop, trying to get it done, but they're waiting actively. They're using their time.
Yeah, that's one way of, it's like even though I'm waiting, I'm still doing something. I'm still learning something. I'm still actively working on my physical being. I'm still actively, out
Pursuing the
there.
things I feel God's calling me to do. It
Yep.
could just be, like I said, working at Tim Hortons. It could be that.
Yep. Yep.
It could it could be an office. It could be as a teacher. It could be as a student. There's so many different things that God's calling people to do. So,
Volunteering if you don't know what else to do. There are so many places where volunteers are so needed.
and it's
these
so
things though, faithfulness, love, justice,
Hmm.
they need to be prepared.
Yep.
I don't know why, but this whole podcast has me just thinking of the 10 virgins. You got
Yes.
the
being
5
Yeah.
wise and 5 foolish, right?
Yep. Having the
We
lamps filled and
grow
those
the
who
ones who risk of wait of becoming sleepy. When they do sleep, they realize they don't have the full faithfulness or preparedness. They're either and then it warns you cannot borrow or ask for these things. These
Yep.
things have to be prepared,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
waiting around does not prepare these things. Like you said,
It's
active waiting. You have to be
exactly.
faithful. You have to prepare.
And that was what I was that was what was coming to my mind too, is because you had those 5 who were just sitting around waiting, and you had the other 5 who were actively waiting. They were still waiting, but they were still active in what they were doing, and
they
not
were
just
prepared for what was to come,
they were prepared for
filling
what.
their lamps, being ready.
They
Yeah.
were alert.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They were watchful.
Don't be like the other slugs sitting on the couch staring at the wall thinking it's going to come knocking at your door.
Yeah, it'll come eventually. I'll figure it out then.
Yep. 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 Yep.
But
So,
Yep.
also keep in mind all 10 virgins were there
Yep. They were.
and the door was opened. But they couldn't
Mhm.
enter because they didn't have their oil. So all will know that the door will be open, but some will go and try to find faith
Yep.
Mhm.
or ask for it, and it will not be given because it's something you prepare.
Yeah.
Yep.
So just make sure that everybody remember this, like just wait for the Lord, but actively wait. It's an action verb, not a passive one.
Yep.
And God will bless those who wait on him, but do his will in the waiting. So yeah. Well, that should bring us to the end of this episode. If there's anything you'd like to talk to us about, find us on Instagram, X, and Facebook. You can also find us at route77.ca or email us at route77ministries@gmail.com. That's ROUTE 77ministries@gmail.com. And we shall see you here next time. Just have some waiting. Till next time.
Wait till the next episode. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's all for today's episode. Remember, waiting isn't passive. It's about trusting God in the process and doing the next thing He calls us to do, even when it feels like we're standing still. I hope today's conversation encourages you to see the value in the waiting season and the importance of trusting God's timing. If you'd like to reach out, you can find us on Instagram, X, and Facebook, or you can head over to route77.ca and email us at route77ministries@gmail.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you here next time. Just a little more waiting until then. And remember to live your single life to its fullest.